Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday and what is episode 43, I believe, of Rejuvenated Women, Impeccable Health for High-Performing Women. I'm Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley, and I wanted to dive into this discussion around immune function. Last week I shared on the podcast, and I believe not live in the group, but on our podcast around our experience with COVID-19, and because we've had it, we've still been recovering. I'm still home quarantining with my son, but expecting to get back to life at the end of the week, and I'm really looking forward to that. But there's been a lot of chatter, I will say, on social media and on the news that I intentionally don't watch around immunity, around this vaccine that's now out for COVID-19, and around all this stuff. So I wanted to jump in and actually talk about how do we qualitatively, not quantitatively, but qualitatively measure our immune function and how well our immune system is actually working. And this, I just happened to, I was cleaning up my desktop on my computer and it came across some notes from when I did my advanced pediatric chiropractic certification, which honestly is the thing that initially launched me into doing a lot more functional medicine. But I have these notes on the qualitative immune assessment. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. So I want to talk through this because, for so many of us, we tend to define how well our immune system is functioning by how often we get sick. And this is number one. So this is like the first thing, but there's 13 of them, okay, that really tell us how well our immune system is functioning. And so number one is, how frequently do we get sick? If you get sick literally all the time, obviously that means that your immune system is not doing very well. It's not, it's responding, but it's responding to like everything. So you're coming down with, and it's having to react all the time is what that means. It doesn't end there though. So, we tend to think about like, oh, I don't ever get sick, so I'm fine. Or, oh, I get sick all the time, so I must be a hot mess. And what's wrong with me? But the things that we do when we're sick too, don't help us start to build up that immunity. And I've talked about this a lot. Gut function is the second thing that we really need to pay attention to. So, if your gut health isn't good, if your microbiome isn't good, if you were born cesarean, or you have IBS, or you have an we're going to talk about all these things actually, but autoimmune disease, allergies, asthma, ADHD, all of this stuff contributes to and is controlled by your gut function. So first we're looking at how often do you get sick? Then we're looking at our gut function. Are you taking a probiotic? It's not all about that, but that helps. Is there room in your gut for bacteria to colonize and replant themselves in there? All of these things are important when we talk about our immune function, because 90% of our immune function is actually coming from the gut. And so the rest of these things that we really want to look at and measure are related to that. All of these things come back to gut health, honestly. But, there's different ways that you can just look at yourself and say, okay, how strong is my immune system really? And where do I need to focus to start to strengthen it more? I'm just going to give you a little tip. It's gut health, but let's keep going. So autoimmune conditions. This particular professor, I'm going to click on these notes and read this quote from him, but he said, today's allergies are tomorrow's autoimmune diseases. And what that means is, when we've gotten to the point where we've developed allergies, we've developed asthma, it's a sign that our immune system's out of balance. And there are two types of reactions that our immune response has. So there's pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory. And when you start to develop allergies, asthma, eczema, a lot of the childhood issues, ADHD is another one of them, it is caused by that immune system being out of kilter. So there's too much of one type of response going on, and that causes you to start to react to things in your environment. Allergies is like the first step in that. And then an autoimmune condition develops from that, where we're not reacting to our environment anymore. We're reacting to what's internal, what our, stuff inside of our body. So we start to attack our organs or our cells or, different parts of our body. And that's what autoimmune is. So if you've got an autoimmune condition, your immune function is out of sync and out of balance and needs some attention and some help, and is not going to be as strong as it should be. One of the things that causes that to go out of sync and out of balance, I might end up talking a long time on this one, guys, just a heads up. But one of the things that, causes that to go out of balance is vaccines. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not a pro-vaxxer. Let's look at science and at your body and at how much stuff it's been inundated with up to this point, and just analyze, what's the risk and what's the benefit, because vaccines will cause a certain type of immune reaction in your body. So it produces artificial immunity, right? There's natural immunity, artificial immunity. Those who've had COVID-19 develop a natural immunity to at least one strain of it. I've been told there's multiple strains out now. Those who haven't had it and get a vaccine will develop artificial immunity. Neither of them are like 100% guarantee that you're going to be protected, but it means that your immune system has a way to recognize what this thing called COVID-19 is and can help your body fight it. So it a bunch of things are signaled coming from the bacteria in our gut to help the body fight this off. And so when that is in balance and working the way it should, it all happens like it's supposed to. We might have symptoms for a little bit, but our body fights it off and we're like good to go. Whereas when our immune system's not working well, it's drug out for a long time, we're feeling crappy, we, aren't eating well, all these things, we start to develop other symptoms, have secondary infections, there's all this stuff that can happen. So just, we're looking at this in the context of all the stuff that's been going on in our body, underlying things we have going on in our body, and how do we best start to support ourselves to be able to fight? Because honestly, our bodies have the ability to fight off disease. That's what they were designed to do, and it's amazing. That was just number 3. We're talking about 13. And my plan is to actually do a series where I'm going to talk about each of these things individually in a lot more depth and detail over the coming days and weeks. But I wanted to just give you a cursory overview. So far we've looked at, let's just recap. How frequently are you getting sick? How's your gut health? Are you having 2 normal bowel movements a day, or do you have diarrhea, or feel bloated or feel sick after you eat, or nausea, or there's lots of signs that you're get constipated. All these things are signs that your gut health is off. You have skin issues, you have asthma, allergies, all that stuff. And a lot of the things we're about to hit are related to the gut. Then autoimmune issues, if you've got something in the autoimmune category, that's just a sign your immune system is out of balance, right? That's what we're talking about. If your mood is off, you get the big mood swings, whether or not it's around your cycle. You have anxiety or depression. These are really high right now. And so I'm going to do a whole episode on that because it's winter in Alaska here where, it's dark and people are stuck at home, as I've been. And it's like, I almost don't want to leave again, but, we need to still be able to get out and do stuff and work. And, if you're having mood, anxiety, depression issues, it's a sign that immune function isn't working well and there's imbalance going on, inflammation in the brain. ADD, ADHD, and autism are all related to your immune system being out of balance. Some of this might be news to some people. I posted something about this, and one of my high school teachers was interested but curious about, why that is. So I'm going to talk about that, not right now, but next time on a later episode, future experience. Pain and inflammation. If you've got chronic pain or inflammation going on, you can do a test right now. Everyone, if you wrap your fingers around your wrist or your thumb, I can't really show this on the camera, but you should be able to grab your thumb and your middle finger, whatever finger's longest, around your wrist. And as you feel it, you should be able to feel, is it puffy? Is it pretty soft? Is it, hard, firm? If it's not puffy, like your fingers won't dig in at all, it won't feel soft and squishy, you shouldn't really be able to squeeze like fluid. Like I've got a little bit of inflammation going on today. So that's a test. And that tells you if you have some systemic inflammation in your body. If you have pain, that's another sign that there's, and the reason why that detracts from your immune system is it causes your body's having to deal with and react to multiple things. So there are, it's having to send neurotransmitters and hormones and all the stuff to the areas that are in pain and inflamed, as well as deal with whatever else it's being bombarded with from the external environment and internal environment from what you're eating. So this is why it causes immune systems to be, or your immune function to be out of balance. The next thing is cancer. I don't think I need to spend a ton of time talking about that, but if you've had or have someone, have a genetic thing going on where cancer is something that runs in the family, that's something to just be aware of. It's going to cause your immune system to be not functioning well. If you have sleep issues, or you're not sleeping, or you're staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning reading a book, it starts to detract from your immune function. We need at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep just for our bodies to function normally and to have our immune system in balance and going. If you have chronic fatigue, this is a common thing, fibromyalgia, autoimmune version of this, but you're just always tired. It's going to be a sign that there's stuff going on with your immune system. Heart disease is next. Metabolic diseases, so diabetes, obesity, these can be in your family tree or something you're currently dealing with. You know, a lot of us, I've talked about insulin resistance and a lot of different things on the podcast and in the group. And so if you're dealing with either of those things, you really gotta pay attention. And then the last thing is your endocrine system. So that can be your hormones, it can be fertility, it can be, you know, dealing with stuff around your cycle, it can be having trouble losing weight, thyroid, all that stuff is grouped in with your endocrine system. So what does this all mean? You know, we have this picture of 13 things, all of which can give us insight into how well your body can respond when it is inundated with whatever it is, a virus, flu, which can also be a virus, you know, a bacteria, some sort of illness, some sort of infection. Your body's immune function has to be able to rise to the occasion and do what it needs to do. And when you have some of these other things going on, it can't do that. So does this mean that we all need to go get the vaccine because our immune system's just shot, you know, if you have like multiples of those things going on? Not necessarily. And we're not going to talk about, I'm not advising anything around vaccines because I don't do that. I'm just giving you some stuff to think about, you know, regardless of your choice around that and what works for you and your family. And my big stance is it's a choice. No one can force you to do something medically related, at least not yet in our country. And I'm hoping we never get to that point. But, you know, at this point, we have control over what goes on with our body and what we choose to do. So just number one is to recognize that. And number two is to start, you know, thinking outside the box and looking at this differently. So in the context of talking about vaccines, just in general, I'm going to share a piece of my story that I talk about in my program, but not as much outside of there. And that is, you know, this class where I got this qualitative immune assessment from, I had some realizations. So when I was 11 and 12, I got really, really sick. I was sick for like 45 days and missed school that long, both my 7th and my 8th grade year. They didn't hold me back, but no one could figure out what was wrong with me. I think they tested me for mono like 7 different times. They were constantly, every time I went to the doctor, they were drawing blood and poking and prodding and doing tests, and no one could figure out what the problem was. And so finally someone decided, they were like, well, we've done everything else. Let's, you know, test for allergies. And so I came back as being allergic to cats. And we had a cat that I slept with all day, and grass and I think dust were like the big ones, and dogs as well. And so I'd gone from being this healthy girl with no problems who like ran around outside and played with the animals and did all the I was a little Vermont hooligan child. Grew up with kind of hippie parents. They're not really hippie anymore. But, you know, I went from that to having this awful patch of itchy eczema on my hand and having asthma. I ended up with exercise-induced asthma. I went for a run one day training for soccer, and I almost like couldn't breathe, had a complete asthma attack, panic attack. It was really scary. And also having allergies. And so I ended up on all these antihistamines and steroids to decrease inflammation. And that was just because that's what we did, right? And I didn't realize, and no one could explain to me, because even at 12 or 11, I was like, well, why did this just happen? You know, I wasn't born this way. So what happened? And I didn't understand this until I sat through this class on immunology and really understanding how our immune system works and where immunity comes from. I had kind of a sequela, or however you want to say that, sequela, that word, of things that stressed out my immune system and created imbalance. A lot of them we just talked about. I was born C-section. My mom's going to watch this and thinks it's all her fault. It's not. You know, there's things we can't control, and C-sections are up 30% in our country, at least, probably more by now. But I was born cesarean. I was breastfed, but only for about a year. And there was a couple other things in there that, you know, I didn't get good gut bacteria, gut flora. We didn't eat the cleanest. My parents are very clean eaters now, but, you know, we were eating all the crap that kids eat today, Pop-Tarts and soda and all, you know, SpaghettiOs and whatever else, just the stuff, right? And so when I got my booster shots, and I was vaccinated as well. And when I got my booster shot to start middle school, it was right after that all my health problems started. And so it's not that vaccines are these horrible, evil things. They serve a great purpose. There's definitely pros to vaccines, right? And they've done amazing things for our quality of health and all of that stuff in our country. What we have to consider is what state our bodies and our immune system, looking at this qualitative assessment, is in before we introduce that artificial immunity that triggers an immune response that's going to keep triggering. So it keeps triggering the anti-inflammatory response in the body. But if this is unbalanced and the pro-inflammatory can't keep up and they're not on equal firing level, we start to have problems. A lot of them we just talked about. And so we have to really be aware of, how healthy are we in terms of our immune function before we go and add something to our body, an external thing that, while it's designed to do good, it can cause a lot of other problems on the other side. So hopefully that makes sense for everybody who's listening to this or watching this or, in understanding this. And my encouragement with all of this is, don't get caught up in the hype and the drama and the this or the that. And, there's so much anger and anxiety and all of this stuff going on. We have to be willing to trust in our bodies and give it the tools and the things it needs to be healthy and heal and do what it needs to do. And so that might mean you need to take some time to get your immune system back in balance, especially if some of those 13 things you're like, oh yeah, that happens and I've got that, or, I've got that going on. And this is across the board. Like I see a lot of this stuff in young kids. And so that was originally where I learned about all this, was in a pediatric class, but I also see it in the adult women that I work with on a daily basis, who are those of you who are listening and watching this, right? So it applies to everybody, and you really want to just look at your family as a whole. And over the next couple of days and weeks, I'm going to go live more often here coming up before Christmas, and also put out some more podcasts here towards the end of the year just to really hammer this stuff out. But, I'll go more into how do you actually go about recreating balance if you're out of balance in that immune function, depending on what area it is. The big underlying theme with all of it comes down to our gut health. But it's not just about taking a probiotic. There might be some steps that we have to take before then to actually get the gut to a point where taking a probiotic is helpful, because otherwise you're just taking probiotic and it doesn't have anywhere to land to colonize for the good bacteria to be, because you're so inundated with the bad stuff. So we're going to talk about all that. I'm open to questions about any and all of this. I hope this helps serve you. And just, my goal is to make you think, and not just to follow. If you look at our health as an overall population, we have one of the sickest developed countries in the world. We rank 37th on a list of 40 developed nations in terms of how healthy we are and how much money we spend on healthcare. And so much of it is not treatable. We spend more than any other country on our healthcare system and on health insurance and all of this stuff. And you would think for that we would be some of the healthiest people in the world, and we're not. And the reason is, we don't bring into consideration or look at ourselves from this whole perspective of really understanding, like, okay, what is going on? And when you keep adding, more medication and more vaccines and more of this and more of that, and more additives in our food and more stuff that we spray in the air and clean with, and we're killing all the good germs as well as the bad germs, and like our guts are just stressed out, from kids all the way up to grandma and grandpa at this point. And if we aren't taking that into consideration, we're just going to keep running in this rabbit hole rat race where 60% of our population has a chronic underlying health condition, and it's not treatable with Western medicine and medication. They manage the symptoms, but it's not actually doing anything to fix the problem. So we are talking about fixing the problem. You can tell I'm really passionate about this. So, like I said, I hope this helps you, serves you. Apparently, I can talk a really long time about immunity and gut function. I'm going to break all these down into smaller, shorter, bite-sized things that you can really, get a lot out of and start to understand what you need to actually do to start bringing balance back to your immune function, regardless of whether or not you get get a vaccine. You do you. I just want you to understand and think, and not just follow the status quo and what everyone tells you to do, because they do so without really explaining how all of this stuff works. So I will see you all in the very near future. I'm probably going to jump on live tomorrow and record a couple more podcast episodes as well. So we'll see you then. Bye.